What's going on YouTube? This is AK and you are watching Vlog Warrant, and today I wanted to go over kind of like a part 2 to why it is that your budget AR-15 is more than enough for SHTF. Now, I made a bunch of points in the last video I made about this stuff, but I wanted to just make a couple more points that are more realistic so that you all can have the information that you need, and really think about some things in a very realistic perspective. Okay, so we need to talk about that. There's a lot of folks out here who think that they understand how SHTF is going to look, or some type of civil war, or whatever. They listen to their buddies, they listen to these dorks and nerds that they're friends with, who they're all in competition with one another of who's got the more expensive rifle, who's got the DD, who's got the Geisley, who's got the Noveske, blah, 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 blah. Instead of who's more colder with that AR-15, who can put rounds down range more accurately, right? Who's a gunslinger. So I wanted to talk about this. So give you a couple more points and a different perspective. So there's really just one word that is going to be the reason why your budget AR is more than enough for SHTF. And that word is drones. That's right, folks. Drones. Now, why do I say that? For those of you who aren't living under a rock, you know that Russia invaded Ukraine a couple of years ago, and they've been at war ever since. The Ukrainians have been fighting quite valiantly, and they've been waxing a lot of Russians. One thing has happened in that war. You see, they've developed, like in all wars that have come before, new techniques, new innovations on the battlefield. And their innovation has been drones. They have found that it's been incredibly effective in inflicting heavy amounts of casualties. And because of that, they have forever changed the face of the battlefield. This is something that you need to be concerned with, because if there's ever a ground war in this country, you can bet your ass that drones are going to be involved to a nauseating degree. You see, in all this warfare, all this fighting, the Ukrainians have gathered quite a bit of data on how to inflict these casualties with these drones, different iterations of drones, and so on and so forth. And all they're doing is giving us that information. They're helping us learn how to utilize drones in the most effective, devastating manner possible. So, if and when a scenario transpires here, you see, you spending $3,000 on your AR-15 is going to be a very little consequence, because the truth is you're going to be way more likely to die from what's up there. See, a lot of delusional people have this idea that it's going to be some type of revolutionary war type of scenario where one side is on one side of the field, one side is on the other side of the field, and they're going to be trading back and forth with their ARs and AKs and whatever it is that they're fighting with, right? Really a ridiculous way to even look at civil war or what have you. Not saying that shooting won't happen, not saying that firefights are not going to transpire. Of course they will. But what's a more realistic scenario is going to be some 18-year-old who's been playing Call of Duty for the past 5 years, who's insane with their hand-eye coordination and with the remote control, who's going to be a mile away controlling this drone, who's going to drop ordnance on your eyebrows, on your forehead. That's what's more likely to transpire. You see, one thing that's happening over in Ukraine right now is you actually have a couple of teenagers that have been recruited who are really good at video games, who have been asked and tasked to kill Russians with drones. And they're quite good at it. So imagine a population of, right now we're like at 340 million people. We're way more into video games than the Ukrainians are. We've got way more young kids that are really good at gaming. You can bet your top dollar that they're going to be recruited to kill you with whatever drones they have, or given to operate. And they're going to be damn good at it too. That's going to be the future of warfare if anything ever happens here. So now, with that said, it should take a little bit of the focus off of how cool and expensive your AR-15 is. It should put more of a practicality in your mind of like, okay, I want to make sure that, I get something I can afford that's reliable, that works, mid-tier rifle, right? But at the same time, you're not going to just throw away a bunch of money like that just because you want to impress your buddies, right? This is a very important thing to consider. And let alone, not to mention what I talked about on the last video about why your budget AR-15 is more than enough. Confiscations, right? There's so many factors when you're talking about an armed conflict or some type of real crappy scenario happening in America that's violent. If the military enacts martial law, trust and believe they're going to be authoritarian with the way that they're going to go after guns. It doesn't matter who's in office, okay? A lot of people some people wanted to argue with me on that last video when it came to Hurricane Katrina, saying that people didn't take guns, whatever, the National Guard didn't, but they did. Just imagine how it's going to be when there's actual political violence that is on a wide scale, on a massive scale. Yes, they're going to have a very vested interest in taking your weapons from you. So there's a good chance you won't even have the weapon if you get caught slipping that you bought to use in the very scenario that you find yourself in. Not only that, but the truth is if we were to go to war with each other, well, other countries are going to have a vested interest also in either seeing America collapse or seeing it thrive. And you can also bet that those countries are going to probably arm different groups. If you decide that you want to step off of the porch and get yourself involved in this craziness, well, guess what? You might end up with a surplus rifle and might not even end up using what you bought. Who knows, right? Anything can happen. The variables are quite wide, okay? But the one point that is most important, the most important of all the other ones, is drones. Really and truly, you're talking about a massive country, a lot of people. Oh yeah, they're going to be everywhere. And the truth is it's going to break a lot of your spirits. Having the idea in your head that, oh wow, as soon as I decide to get myself involved in all of whatever is to come, if it happens, and make that conscious decision to step out here and get involved and try to enforce your will or whatever party's will on someone else, you don't know what's going on up there. It could be over like that. You have no idea. See, that's something that a lot of you are not ready for. And again, that takes away from putting all your emphasis on how rizzy, how cool your AR is to your friends. Now you have other considerations you got to think about. So are you really prepared to be involved in a civil war where, yeah, you can call it what you want, whether you're conservative or liberal. But let's just say for my conservative audience, you got a couple hippies that have no problem drop an ordinance on you and your buds. And they're good at it too. You know, you got to think, with a country of a lot of youngsters who grew up on Call of Duty, Battlefield, Fortnite, they have no problem with violence. They've been desensitized to it because it's behind a screen. Those same kids are going to have no problem waxing you and your buddies in a civil conflict. It's going to be the same thing, a remote and a screen. And that's going to be the norm. And it's going to break a lot of you. You're not going to want to get involved because your fantasy isn't playing out the way that you wanted it to. So I hope with the perspective that I've given, you have a more realistic view of why you're probably good with your mid-tier AR. This one right here happens to be a Smith & Wesson M&P Sport 3. For those who've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I am a huge fan of these rifles. Yes, I own BCMs and stuff like that, and I love them. BCM and Smith & Wesson are my two favorite AR brands, but this is my first love in terms of like AR-15. For 1000%, I love the Sport series of rifles, and I think that they're more than enough, you know, to protect your family with. Again, I would put a different BCG in there, have the stock one as a backup, but they're all you need, you know. And so with seeing foresight, it should change your perspective on not listening to these nerds. You know, last thing I really want to say is, I think, unfortunately, the gun community's been oversaturated with dorks and nerds. You know, people who really were bullied back in school, you know, high school and stuff like that. You know, we probably didn't have any friends. And, of course, maybe we're too chicken shit to join the military. So now they have to overcompensate by getting into the gun game and into the shooting arena and spending all their money to say that they're better than you. You know, the funny thing is I got a buddy who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's a Marine. He was a part of the first wave to go in Iraq after, you know, the towers were attacked. And he's got quite a few bodies under his belt. Showed me a lot of pictures of photos he took of things going on over there. Crazy things that were happening. And funnily enough, when he came back, his AR-15 of choice was a Ruger AR-556. Yeah. And I asked him, like, yeah, you good with that? He's like, yeah, dude, it's very similar to the Colt I had, bro. It's more than enough. I'll be fine if anything happens. But then I've known actual dorks who are afraid of their own shadow, quite frankly, and they seem to be very obsessed with the brand name of the AR-15 and looking down on people that can only afford mid-tier, you know, rifles. So there you have it. I think those are the people that have given everyone this idea that warfare is going to look a certain way, and it's just not. Okay, so I want to make sure that I drive that point home, that everybody has a realistic idea and perspective of how things are going to look. And who knows, a couple years from now, if we're even allowed to watch YouTube, you can look back on this video and be like, hey, that guy was onto something. So with that said, I really hope that y'all enjoyed my perspective. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment section below. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and I will see y'all later. Peace.